Well, we're actually really excited because you're the first coach that we've talked to.
Nice.
We have actually a lot of questions about like how you manage your team, what are things you do for yourself, how do you prepare for a game,
Find players.
find players. But
Talent.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, like if you want to start, maybe give a quick intro. I'm familiar with you, but everyone else know. Yeah,
Yeah, of course. I could just jump in whenever.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Kaplan, and I've been head coach of Sentinels VALORANT team for 2 seasons now. And then I coached Ghost Gaming before franchising for about a year and a half, and I played VALORANT professionally on Space Station Gaming. I IGL'd and built a team over there for about half a year, and I'm 30, married with 2 dogs, and grew up in New England, but spent my 20s in Seattle. Got a degree in psychology over there, and yeah, just living in LA doing esports in the Valorant franchising world.
Important. What kind of dogs?
That is a very important question. I have a 8-year-old Australian Kelpie, pretty uncommon, unknown breed, but basically, if you know like blue healers,
Yep.
not that different. And then my wife, before we met, she's 12 years old. Her name's Nico. She's a little Shih Tzu Chihuahua mix.
Oh, okay, cool.
Small dog, big personality.
You in LA right now?
Yep. We're all here.
So what, and I'm a bit selfish in asking, but what, why a psychology degree? Like what attracted you into doing psychology? And like the second part, where like, do you think it has helped you in kind of what you do today as a coach?
Sure, yeah. Psychology is a funny degree. It doesn't get you directly anywhere with 4 years of with a bachelor's. So that's the downside. You know, if you're looking for a clear career path, you gotta.
My undergrad degree was also in psychology, which is again part of the selfish reason that I'm asking.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, I went for it. I mean, I was always naturally interested in it, and I have a lot of family who were. My grandparents were both psychologists and psychology professors, and then on my dad's side, and then it just felt like a really good degree if you don't know what you want to do because it applies to everything. And I grew up with esports. My brother was a pro Overwatch player and then pro Overwatch coach for Boston Uprising. And then I was like thinking, oh, I'll do esports psychology maybe. So I kind of tried to take sports psychology classes in school, and then Project A, now Valorant, got announced, and I decided to just attempt to copy his career path, which worked out. So he paved the way.
How much older is he?
He's 2 years older.
Okay. Not a huge gap.
No.
Yeah. You're paving your own path, it sounds like. 2 years is nothing.
Yeah, exactly. But he was, he did show me definitely that getting into a game, like when it comes out on the ground floor, is a huge advantage if you're trying to cement yourself in the esport. And then, yeah, and then obviously playing is helpful in terms of transitioning to a coach because you understand the game from the player perspective.
Well, you played at a pretty high level.
Yeah. Back then, it was easier back then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like how much do you think you being able to play at that level helps with coaching? Do you think it's necessary for someone to be, I don't know, like an Immortal Plus player to really understand the game and be a coach, or do you think it's not really relevant at all?
I think it definitely helps, but it's not necessary. But you have to be humble if you haven't played in terms of like fundamentals and movement and what angles are strong, and like, to be honest, it definitely helped, like with kind of with getting some credit and some trust from players. And IGLing helped me a ton because I was able to understand the game really well strategically, and I could kind of leverage that as a coach with my team, and they definitely respected me having a strong point there. But like in terms of fundamentals, a lot of a lot of the players I've worked with are have better understanding of the game's fundamentals than me, or at least back then. I think I've probably come closer to equal now, but when I first coached Ghost, having players like Dazzle and Nismo who had played Counter-Strike at a really high level for a long time. I grew up playing Counter-Strike, but clearly not as well as them. There's a lot of times where I still ask the players, I'm like, hey, like, I feel like we need to hold this angle to get information in the round, but like, is there a reason you guys don't like to hold it? Or I get them to talk to each other. Do you think this is a strong angle? Like,
Yeah.
you definitely have to respect that they play the game all day, every day. And so like, even though I was a pro player, I still understand that the players who are playing all the time that I'm working with are often more proficient at certain things because of it.
And I mean,
Be aware of it.
yeah, and I mean, back to Wayne's second part question, how much has your degree helped you with coaching?
Definitely a fair bit. I think more than anything, it helped me with my own mental health, right? Like, I'm sure you can relate, Wayne, like learning a lot of things about psychology while you're in college and learning to be an adult. It's like definitely gives you a better awareness of some of your habits and life choices and what you can do. And I think generally getting a college degree and living on my own and working outside of esports, all those things have helped me, like, just know how to set an example and be an adult in the room sometimes. Because a lot of players at esports don't have that experience. They didn't go to college. They didn't work, a lot of the times even one job before esports. So you have to like set the example. But the psychology specific stuff does come in handy for sure, especially like I think mostly in the day to day, like okay, we have 5 weeks to grind in scrims for leading up to this match. Like, what can we all do to better our habits and our health and sleep hygiene, just basic stuff like that.
How's team doing with the sleep? It seems like that is a hot topic that gamers don't sleep after practice. They're streaming for hours and hours and they're playing till 3 a.m. What is that looking like for your team?
We're pretty darn good. I'm pretty proud of it, and that's a lot of thanks to all the guys on the team. The older players, John and Zelsis, are both like health forward. They both gym. They both eat clean. They care about good sleep, good habits. Zekin is also health forward and has worked with them for a year. And then Bang and Narrate coming in, like they were already coming into a fairly healthy team, and they were like, more than anything, signed to the team for their grit and desire to work hard. And they have a team that communicates to them, hey, this is part of working hard. So yeah, I've been lucky. This year has been the first year, really, I can say that my whole team, like the entire team, go to the gym. They all take things super serious. Like, we eat fairly clean lunches and whatnot.
Nice.
And then we challenge each other too. Every start of a scrim day, we pick a habit we're going to work on building for the week. Everyone picks it, and I check in every day. Hey, did you do this yesterday or last night? And they egg each other on about it. So,
What's the favorite non-clean thing?
the favorite like non-clean snack? Or
Like, oh man, okay, we've been doing a good job. Like, is there a universal, like Taco Bell?
Yeah.
I think Chick-fil-A is, we never get it as a dinner, as a lunch, but it's always suggested. Jersey Mike's, we were getting a bit of. I actually asked us to ban Jersey Mike's from the lunch rotation because it was the one where I was like, oh man, I'm. It's not bad, but like, not my favorite lunch.
Well, you mentioned about like, bringing folks on for kind of their grit and work ethic. I think that's something that a lot of people are curious about, and especially, young folks now that are coming up. Like, we talk about this a lot. Like, when we were growing up, gaming was nowhere near as popular or accepted or cool as it was today, right? Like, it was a pejorative term to be called a gamer growing up, right? It was just like, nerd, whatever. Like, you're this other thing. So for a lot of kids that are kind of growing up now, and we have esports programs in middle schools, high schools, like colleges and stuff like that. For those that do aspire and go like, oh, I want to play at a professional level one day. What kind of things do you think are important, or that you look for, like when considering about bringing a player on, scouting players, or any of that stuff?
Yeah, it's definitely, well, first of all, it's definitely easier now because you're right. Like, esports is so much bigger now. And I think most people my age or even mid-20s currently in esports grew up in a time where it wasn't a huge thing. They were playing games solely as an escape, probably.
Yeah.
If they were playing it the amount you needed to play to be a pro. Like, that was probably an escape, an unhealthy habit for that person. And then, wait a minute, I'm really good. And there's this thing called esports. And yeah, definitely now even though that might be part of why a player is playing the game so much, okay, as an escape or an avoidance to the daily grind of middle school or high school, at least it's in front of them the whole time that esports is a thing that they can do. So then they like have the aspiration from the get go. They don't just sort of fall into it, which is makes it's easier, to be honest. Like I think it's probably easier to coach now than 5-10 years ago because it's easier to get players with work ethic because of that. But I think yeah, like the ability to emotionally communicate is just crazy important in these games. Like there are, it's not like it's 7 people. It's 5 players and an assistant coach and a head coach. You have to constantly criticize and give feedback to each other for over 50 hours a week. Like that's a very emotionally fatiguing thing. You need to pick each other up when you're down and frustrated in a match. You need to like no matter how prepared you are, the game 6 rounds in turns into this total just creative on the fly flow in matches. So if you're not kind of all on the same wavelength or one player's in their head or something, this game I think probably compared to some esports spirals particularly fast because you need to be off the cuff at a certain point no matter how much time you spend. And because of that, if you have a player that just can't emotionally connect to the rest of the team or can't communicate things, either how they're feeling or give feedback to someone and know how to do it correctly or be able to at least talk through it. It's so difficult. It causes team burnout like really quickly if you just hit a roadblock like that. So this team, all 5 players are very capable of talking out their emotions and like I can really like mediate a conversation and get somewhere with them. And I think for some coaches and teams it's not as important probably. Like I can't imagine working in a different way than that or building a team in a different way than that.
How could you find that out beforehand? Like, I think clearly, people always think, like, even traditional sports will be like, oh, it's like some level of skill, and they kind of negate the emotional and the mental component to it that, especially at the high level, can create such degrees of separation where skill levels are maybe like pretty close. And those things can really separate, or like you mentioned, even like sabotage performance if one person's just kind of completely something else. But are there ways to like get a sense of if that chemistry is there before bringing someone on or anything like that, or is it more of just like kind of trial and error, and once you get in there you can kind of see?
Yeah, I think whether it's the head coach doing it or a GM or someone at the org, and in my case, I really enjoy doing it. You have to interview a lot, like a lot of hours with each player, and you need to hit up their references. And you need to know the rest of your team's personality makeup, which is really hard if you're building a team from scratch or you're coming in as a coach who hasn't been on the team previously. Probably at that point, you need to talk to the previous coach and hope they can help you and want to help you. But like in my case, at least I knew John, Zelsis, and Zekin all for years. Well, Zelsis for 1 year and the others for multiple years at that point. So like I can get a good idea of like what traits they have and what we might be missing personality wise. Maybe I know I need one more player who's really willing to call stuff out when things aren't going right. And
Yeah.
you can kind of envision how the personality, like what pieces are you missing? And I just write it down. Like I just kind of try to write down sort of the summary of everything I know about these guys and their traits, just to kind of look at it and go, what's missing here? And then, yeah, it's things that don't happen on pro teams for some reason. Still to this day, reaching out to references, which isn't great sometimes. It's not the most helpful thing, but like for Nary and Bang, both of them, I probably between talking and messaging to them spent, I would guess, over 6 or 7 hours of one-on-one time with each of them before we ever really pursued signing them. And I just kind of from, just getting to know them and if you have a 2 or 3 hour long call with someone twice, plus a couple Discord late night conversations over text, like they're going to end up showing themselves and sharing things, and you can get to know them. And I think you have to do those things. I think you can't possibly like play with a player for like a week and just get that out of them in a practice environment. Like
Yeah.
some people might show themselves right away, but a lot of the time they're going to hide stuff or take a while to be comfortable. And you need to it's also like a rat race. Like you can't just like play with somebody for like a month before you sign them because you've got other teams.
Yeah.
At least in our case, that want them, right? Because we have a higher budget, obviously, so it's more competitive in terms of the players we're going for.
What is it like being on Sentinels? And it seems like they're investing in staff, right? Like a lot of the teams before was all player led, I would say. Like get this one really good player or that a player that we think is really good. Let's keep him happy and recruit who he says.
Yeah.
It seems like the tides are turning, right? Let's invest in the coach, get a solid coach, let this coach do the right things and recruit the right people. So yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on that because this is something new, right, for esports.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. One thing I like about Sentinels is they actually strike a very good middle ground. I think they understand this team is a collective thing, and we need to get everyone's opinion on when it, even when it comes to renewing me, they're gonna really work with the players that would be working with me already that are still under contract and figure out they like working with me and vice versa. I think it's a very hard balance to find in esports. Like at the end of the day, I think it's important that we aren't all exactly peers. Like that, if that's like fundamental to being a coach, right? By definition, you need to be the head of the team, the leader of the team, and
Yeah.
but I think barely so compared to sports. And I think, it's been this odd thing where in esports, it's been very player run, completely player run. And I don't think that works because that's not their job to think about and run those things. Their job is to be pro player. They don't end up having all the strengths for that to make those calls. But at the same time, being a head coach of an NFL team, I mean, there's so many people on the field. There's so many people working on the team that you really need to be more of a very clear step ahead of them and a leader, because otherwise things just aren't going to work. It can be more democratic when it's only 7 people, and it needs to be. Like, you really need people to feel confident and feel like they have agency, because when you only have 7 people, you just have to expect everyone to be willing to step up and lead at a certain point. So I think Sentinels does a really good job understanding that. And I'm also not, the type to, obviously I'm explaining that I believe that's how it should go. I'm not the type to slam the mallet down and abuse my power, even if I do have it. And that works incredibly well for buying players, earning players respect and trust too, right? Like Steve Kerr I don't follow basketball, to be honest, but I read and listen to how he views leadership, and it really is just like empowering others. And it's something I don't think that works all the time. Like, you need to be the league for yourself, but and I'm sure he knows that too. But
Yeah.
so I think it's like you need that part. Otherwise, players are just not gonna enjoy working with you, and it's not gonna work that well.
For those that want to, I mean, really kind of, again, like a two-part question. For those who aspire to be a coach, and for those that aspire to be pro players, like you kind of talked about the emotional intelligence and ability to communicate. That's really important, especially to play at a high level of the team in dynamics. It makes so much sense. But if I'm like, a high school kid, a college kid, or something like that, how do I practice those things or get to train those things or put myself in situations where I can improve those things? I mean, some of it obviously probably life. These are also like really important life skills that you should have.
Play on a team. Like, it makes me sad. That's one part of Valorant that makes me sad, is there's a lot of aspiring players that don't play on teams, and it's not like as central to the culture of the game. I grew up playing Counter-Strike. I remember I was playing at a Dust 2 server. I was 12 years old. A different guy who turned out to also be 12 years old just typed to me in the chat, "Want to make a team?" And I never played sports. I almost didn't even get it. I was like, "What do you mean? You make a team and you compete with other people in tournaments and leagues?" And I was like, okay."
Yeah.
And all my best friends were my online best friends. And I played on teams in different esports growing up in my teen years, and that was was super social. I was constantly talking on my computer. I remember being 13 and sort of being like with older players on the team, like, hey guys, what if we after practice today, like, say what we're thinking about each other? Because I think we'll like have more fun playing if we do that. Because we seem to get frustrated right now. And there's all these players who want to go pro, and you know, I can't sit there and tell them, "Well, go get a job to get life skills," because then you're probably not gonna sometimes be able, frankly, to play enough to make it. But I'll I'll, definitely be able to say Valorant ranked is not the environment to learn social skills, and, just, like, you can still grind the game on ranked so much, but just make a team with your buddies, and just you can find scrims. Like, it's Prac.com. That's, reach out to tier 1, tier 2 coaches. They'll help you get set up there and get in the right group. You book scrims and just play. Like, even if you have nothing to play for, just play with a group of guys and play Premier, obviously. Like, that's something you can do with the scrims. You can go and play in the in-game, competitive mode that actually is a pipeline into tier 2, so.
How much of that Valorant ranked skill carries over to a scrim environment? Like, I've seen a lot of players where you watch them play and they're insane, like the ranked demons, right? But then you see them play in a tournament and they're just not that great.
Yeah.
Like, because it's really just running around and doing whatever you want to do, right? But when you're playing on a team, you have to think about your team and how you can support them and things like that. But there's obviously some skill to being good at ranked, right? But how much of that actually carries over?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good I like, for example, my career as a player, I definitely fell off because I wasn't playing the game that much outside of practice, and I regret that, but I was also doing so many things in terms of IGLing and a lot of, like, what a coach would do on a team.
Yeah.
So I just didn't have the capacity personally. But yeah, I've thought about that for a while. I think that in order to go pro, you have to play an exhausting amount of the game initially. Like, you need some amount of thousands of hours on your belt to have the mechanics and the comfort in the game and the intuition to be there. And you need to put that time in no matter what else you're doing in terms of your pursuit of being pro. But I think once you hit that point, there's so much more. Like, okay, you've acquired pro level mechanics and comfort and aim and whatever. Now you need to there's so many more things you need to think about as a player. You need to communicate incredibly well. You need to play and make with your teammates, which is just not a skill you're going to build in ranked because you don't have teammates that are going to ever reward it or bring it to fruition. You need to consider a lot more variables than you need to consider in ranked. Doing all of that mentally while playing at a good level is a very unique skill, and you're never going to build that unless you're playing on a team. So I'd say, yeah, if you want to go pro, pour thousands of hours into ranked, but are you like Immortal 3/Radiant and feeling like your movement and your mechanics and your understanding of angles and simple stuff like crossfires and peeking off each other is there? Like, you're hanging with the pros that are in your ranked game. Okay, I think you're going to get diminishing returns at this point, and it's time to start playing on a team. And then beyond that, it just depends on the pro player. Like, if I have a player who's picking up a new agent or role swapping, I'm asking them to play a lot of ranked, and I'm looking at their tracker to make sure they're doing it.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I've had players on a team who clearly don't need a lot of time in ranked to do well, or it's almost detrimental. And I've had other players that I've coached where they need a ton of hours to stay feeling confident and comfortable. And at that point, like at the level I'm working at, I feel like it's usually situational. I don't have like every player should play this amount, and it's always good. Yeah.
Not like there's some like amount that is necessary, but it's not sufficient.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. And I think once you've hit that point, what's the amount of hours needed for maintenance of your level, that is very individual based.
You got a match coming up. What's the pregame ritual? What do you guys do? How do you get prepared? Even like walk us through like match day. What happens what time do you go to the arena? What do you guys do at the arena? Like things like that.
Yeah. I like to we get to the office like 45 minutes before we would need to leave the office to get to the right arena. And first 30 minutes is just eat and laugh and hang out, like loosen up.
Yeah.
and then I'll give like a 5-minute pep talk on the way out the door, which is always a really hard thing. Like, do you gas them up, or do you like just I like try to give them a thing to work on. It's like I get so pumped watching these sports documentaries. I watched I grew up watching the Patriots. I watched the Patriots one on Apple TV. I was amped at the start of off season about it. I was like, this team, we're gonna handle the pressure. We're just gonna be upfront with it. That's what the best teams in sports do. That's probably what Astralis and Counter-Strike did. Like, let's do it. And then you like pump these players up. You're like, we got to win this game, and we're going to think about that, and we're going to handle it. We're not going to be afraid of it. And they just do not. It does not land some of the time. Like, and I know it looks sick in like for people who are watching vlogs and stuff, and what, but like sorry, this is kind of a tangent from your question, but like the background of pro players is so different. Like they grew up playing video games, and it did start as like an escape from things. Like pro sports players grew up like they were like competing in sports camps. A lot of pro players, like, before the age of 10, and like the culture in American sports, and even I'm sure like European, football it's like in the culture to like push people really hard. They grow up with it. They also you don't have the same like constant creative flow thinking with each other thing going on in the game, so you don't need to kind of deal with that part, and it just looks awesome and badass to push your players real hard, but like yeah, it just doesn't. I've had to kind of learn it the hard way a few times. I usually find that doesn't work. Um, so I try to. I've come to the conclusion that when they're kind of turtling up or getting stressed in a game, sometimes during the game or between maps, you do need to push them really hard and go, okay, like here's the reality. You're out on stage. We're gonna go out. We need, like, come on, let's not forget, a trip to an international's on the line. Let's go. But if you do it preemptively, it just like pushes over the kind of bell curve of anxiety. So I try to do that was a very long tangent. I'm sorry, but I try to do a very low key kind of fun speech and like what's something we're gonna work on today. I think that's good. Giving somebody a team like just like a day of practice, you need to learn in matches. Here's the thing we're gonna work on today, and then we go and we usually just warm up and chill at the Riot Arena before our game. If it's like we're game 2 and it's been a really long time, I'll have us get up and walk around and just maybe like do a goofy game of heads up on the phone or something before we play, just to kind of get out of that just being slumped warming up in the range for an hour. And yeah, I sometimes in tournaments you have to go over prep day of because it's just back to back. But I usually try to do prep the day before, like of what the opponent's gonna do, or at the start of a game day, because I find doing it right before a game gets people like in this really kind of serious, like I'm gonna think super hard when I get in the server headspace. I'd rather it's like lingering in the back of their head. And even if they forgot a third of the prep, the other 2/3 is kind of in that subconscious, not overthinky space. I find that that's the safer way to go about it.
It feels like there's a fragile threshold of like, almost like that anxiety distribution or like burnout, kind of like where you want to play between that. Where
Yeah.
like I used to do like mixed martial arts back in the day, right? Like combat
Yeah.
stuff like that. And the people that I almost saw a correlation between the people that were before walking out or even the hours leading up to their fight that were already like super serious and really like amped up. By the time it came around to perform, they had burnt through it all.
Yeah.
Like it was already like the adrenaline was gone. They were burnt out. They were in a kind of in a different state versus like finding that timing window in when to like push or when to pull or kind of whatever based on what you're seeing, which also seems like such an important aspect of a coach is knowing your players intimately enough and their emotional kind of like status enough to not like everyone aligned to what I'm saying, but maybe like how individualized does it get at times where it's like, okay, I can, this person's this particular way, this person's that way. Do I sometimes need to, pull back on one player, but push more on another versus just like, here's a uniform message?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something I'm still learning every day. I think obviously like some stuff can be uniform, but
Yeah.
yeah, like I've done I think that was one of the things I was most frustrated about looking back at last year, and one of the things I wish I'd done better about and really want to make sure I did well this year is like, right, I kind of just talked about it. I'm like, do I slam the pressure on them or do I say, let's go out there and have fun? And sometimes I felt like I was just ping-ponging between one and the other, and it's just always such a hard guess of which one they needed. And I think you're right. Like you need to you're not going to have a team that's all the same, and you need to be able to pull people aside. Like there are some players, right, where it's probably best if I just leave them alone with their AirPods in, like let them do their thing. And then there's other players where I might grab them before going out there and say, hey, like it's just a game. Like you're all right. Like you're incredible, and we're gonna be all right. Whatever happens, happens. And I really want you to go out there and have fun. It's important to me. And then there's another player where I could grab them and be like, let's do this. Like if we want to win this. Like you pump those guys up. Like we're come on. Like Thailand's on the line.
Yeah.
And
You're like shaking his shoulders, slapping him across the face, and then sending him out.
Punching up.
and that's like definitely one of the I try to think in the new year like some resolutions of things I want to do better to coach, and that's actually one I think is really I need to tap into more. But yeah, you do have to. You're right. Like players are so different, one to the next, and it is hard. The adrenaline. I hated later games as a player. I would just sit, or it's like going last for a presentation in school. Oh my gosh, you're just sitting around, and I hate having the second game in a day. There's way more time to sit around, and you don't know when you're gonna go up. You're sitting there looking at the score. It gets close on map 2. Are they gonna call us? Oh, it's going to map 3. Another 30 minutes, guys. It's a total pain.
I was amazed at fighters that like impressed me. Everyone's freaking out. We'd be sitting back there, and there'd just be like these veterans. They're like, "Yeah, I'm fighting later on the card," and they would just sleep. They just go to sleep, like in the locker room, like on the little like thing you'd sit on, and they're just like, "All right." And put the order. Yeah, like that's how calm they were. That's how like in control they were. Just like, yeah, all right, I'm going to sleep, and I'm over here like just sweating, freaking out. It's still like 9 hours to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be just like you in those truths. Yeah. Yep. And then with team games, it's like sometimes hard for players to all get that they're all different. You got one player who's like, "We need to get ready. Come on!" Like it takes an hour to warm up to be optimal. And then you got like, another player who's like, they played the range for 10 minutes and now they're like on their Steam Deck or something. And it's like, I think that one's probably like, okay, maybe you should be. It's just like you sit there for a game. But anyway, it's like individualistic, but it's hard when one person's looking at another person they got to depend on, and it's like kind of what's the line in terms of what's objective and subjective?
Yeah.
It's difficult.
With coaching while you're actually playing the game, I always thought that you should be able to talk to your players or a player at least throughout the game, not just at your timeout or in between halves or whatever, right? I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm willing to admit I'm definitely like biased in terms of having to build a skill set in the last 3-4 years around Valorant and its rule set. At first, I thought, oh, it'd be so fun if I could talk to a player all the time.
Yeah.
But then I kind of came around to that pretty quickly, and then I was like, oh, but coaches should be able to stand behind players to rally them and be an emotional presence and support them. And now I'm like, I like it exactly where it's at. And the reason is because I think it's so fun to have to build a team that has so many different strengths. Okay, I need like an IGL who can think critically and adapt and handle things and adjust outside of timeouts and so on, and remember a game plan, et cetera, et cetera. That's just an awesome skill. It's awesome to see someone on stage thriving with that. I need somebody else who can like seriously lead a charge emotionally as like kind of a emotional leader, a captain. An IGL needs to be able to do that too, but you can't expect them to do all of that because playing the game well individually, thinking critically, strategically, and trying to keep your team up emotionally, it's like one of those, pick 2 triangles. Like I picked 2 when I played and I didn't shoot a single player on the screen. Like it's impossible. And then you need another 3 players who also know how to lead at certain moments, pick each other up, and like be like we were talking about earlier, right? And how to me, like building a team where emotional intelligence is a really central part of it, and kind of composure, and like going into matches, let's work on this thing that has nothing to do with the game. And let's walk away from this match going, we got really good at controlling our energy levels, fake it till you make it by controlling our comms, not multi-comming, whatever. Like, those milestones are so fun for me. My job is so deep because of those things. And I just think it's a beautiful part about the game. I think it's makes the work really hard, really fulfilling. I'm biased and can't speak from a spectator standpoint, but my hunch is that as a spectator, as a casual fan, you could see that magic on stage. You could see how this is a brotherhood. These are 5 guys, and if you could IGL essentially as a coach, and or you could be behind them, always being the emotional guy at the end of the day, the failsafe. You could just forget 8 hours of interviews. You could lean more. I'm just gonna pick up let's look at the VLR stats. Let's just
Yeah.
get just beast players and just they're just sort of soldiers out there, and I don't think it's as fun. So,
Yeah.
but I'm obviously biased.
That was a great answer, actually.
Thank you. That was a good question. It's a very interesting difference from esport to esport too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned, something about the differences in, being inspired by all the traditional sports stuff, which is, it is kind of always the same thing. It's like, even in the movies and stuff like that, it's like everyone just powers through it. It's like you get super pumped and you're just like, you're going to run through walls and kind of everything like that. It seems there's also like, esports has gone through just in like even the last, 8 years that I've been running Aimlabs, just like it's been so cyclical in so many ways. And we went through that phase where everyone was like, oh man, esports is the next traditional sports. Here's how many people are watching the NBA finals. Here's how many people are watching, League of Legends, and insert picture of Madison Square Garden full, right? Like,
Yeah.
and doing that. And it seemed like we saw also so many, like a moment in time, it felt like, where, traditional sports owners were buying were esports teams and, buying up spots in Overwatch League. And, they even tried to do, location based kind of things that were pretty interesting. But it also felt like, maybe we were overlooking some of the aspects of gaming and esports that are unique to gaming, that necessarily don't exist in traditional sports. Or do you think that, like, what's next? Like, it felt like everyone's going, traditional sports, let's be like this. It didn't really work out super well. And do you think the pendulum will swing back in that direction? Do you think that there's things that traditional sports could maybe learn from esports? Like, how do you see that comparison and dynamic, today and playing out?
Yeah, it's a good question. Definitely more out of my wheelhouse, but I can try to help. I mean, obviously, I think that the way esports gets money out of their viewers, right, is I think they do a better job at that than sports, right? Like, there's more interesting and unique ways to support your team. And I would love to see sports do that, although I get that you have to come up with some creative ways to do that because sports viewers aren't necessarily playing the game. I think that's one thing that I think esports can learn from more, is like all of the esports that have stood the test of time the most are really fun to watch, and a lot of the viewership are people who don't play. And I think just that's something I would like to see esports channel more from traditional sports. It's just, how do we make this fun to watch? This needs to be fundamentally fun to watch. Like, the esport thriving in terms of viewership being built on the people playing the game, like, I watch because I play. I just don't think that is a model that's ever going to last a couple decades. Like, people aren't going to play the same game for that long. It's never going to happen. But I mean, some people will, but not enough to keep an esport at the top, right? And so sometimes I think, I guess that's an interesting conundrum, right? Like, in my opinion, esports is a model where your viewership hinges on people playing the game a lot.
Yeah.
Is really scary, but at the same time, like, the way esports is currently successfully making money is people buying things that are in the game because they play the game. And I don't know. Like, I'm totally a layman here, and I want to disclaim that I'm just like shooting in the dark, and I'm not somebody who spends any time thinking about not any time, but not a lot of time. I don't have the same information as people who probably work at these developing and publishing. But that seems like kind of a time bomb to me in some ways, right? Like, but it's yeah.
I mean, to touch on that, you're talking about people watching something that don't really play that game, right? Do you think Valorant might run into that issue soon? Because there's so many abilities now. There's new agents like every quarter or whatever. So there's a lot of abilities that can happen on a site. I mean, there's always memes on Twitter of like, this is Valorant, and it's like a breach all followed by a brim, followed by a fade thing, followed by this, followed by that, right? And then I think about watching Valorant and then watching Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike is so simple.
So intuitive.
Nade, flash, molly, guns. That's it, right? So what's your thoughts about like when this gets built out to 20 more agents, like what happens to the viewership, and like how does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I think they just have to maintain like a fundamental like sweet spot of abilities don't go too crazy in terms of how much they take over the gameplay, because then there's always a certain amount of the thrill that it comes down to the clutch or the sweet shot at the end of the day. And like even if you're disoriented because you don't know the last few agents that came out, there's still enough kind of like bones to it that you can lean on that. That's fun to watch. Okay, like I had no clue what happened when those 5 ults went off, but that 1v2 that happened at the end was pretty sweet. So I'm gonna keep watching and I'm gonna watch the next game, and then I'm gonna start to figure out where the ults are. Right? Whereas if the game is just abilities, like you're gonna come in, you're not gonna have anything idea what's going on, what's gonna keep you there. I think Valorant, it's hard if that one's impossible for me to say from my perspective, obviously, but
Yeah.
I guess like hopefully, they haven't gone past that sweet spot. Fortunately, I don't think it will get much more crazy than it currently is. Like, there's always the memes of like Valorant 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and now there's so much going on. But I don't. It's hard to imagine it going much past where it is right now. Like the abilities will be different, but in terms of the on-screen chaos, like I can't imagine the current peak amount of craziness on a site like really getting any further without crazy development missteps.
Maybe it matters too, like how intuitive any of the abilities are, right? Like
Yeah.
a wall is a wall. Like, what does that, something happened, what impact does it have that's intuitive on the game that people kind of see? Oh, now, this is like, as you talk about smoke and everything, that's easy for even a layman to kind of go, okay, I see what's happening here.
Yeah.
So maybe even it's not even the number of abilities or agents, but as long as the abilities in that each agent has, and as they do, are intuitive enough to watch in the sense of gameplay, like maybe that's the magic trick, that as long as that is clear and intuitive enough, you could have a million agents conceptually or something, right? But as long as it's like, oh yeah, I understand, then maybe that's the sweet spot.
Yeah, and obviously, if they do play the game, they're gonna follow that. And I guess like thinking more out loud, kind of as we've been talking about player attention, I hope that they keep developing like Premier and Tier 2 and Tier 3 levels of play. And a lot of people always talk this is a pipeline. This needs to be a pipeline for Tier 1. This needs to exist under Tier 1 for it to be healthy. And that's absolutely true, but that's not the only part about it. I don't think a game is ever going to hold. I don't think most people are going to play any video games ranked mode for more than 3, 4, 5 years. Like that's just a really long time to keep doing the same thing over and over and over. And I think the ranked mode in the game could be a lot more fun, but I also think trying to make attack FPS's ranked mode fun enough that people are going to play it for a decade. I just don't know how anyone's ever going to do that. The game's just you're not going to get. I think that's just too lofty of a goal. But like I grew up playing Counter-Strike for a decade. I had my best friends, some of them, my childhood best friend is because we played Counter-Strike together, and I still see him once a year or two. Um, Old MMOs. I don't know if you guys grew up playing old MMOs.
yeah.
Like, oh, you keep playing them because you have to work with people, and you make friends, and people meet their wives and husbands, right? Like, you go back to these games because they become your communities. I think people will keep playing Valorant for 10 or 15 years if they are playing with their buddies in Premier and they're having, people play in just like their local baseball league, right? Like it's so I do hope that Valorant doesn't underestimate. Just from my personal experience, I think the way you're going to keep people playing, you're not going to keep people playing ranked 30 hours a week as they go through their 20s, but you can keep them hopping on 2 or 3 nights a week with their friends and playing Premiere and playing some scrims. And I guess to me, that seems like the long term of how you'd keep people playing and therefore watching the game from my personal experience.
Yeah, it's tough because even again, like when we grew up, there just wasn't even the sheer amount of high quality games that you could just play at any moment in time instantly. Because you're like, no, I'm gonna play. I mean, we're seeing like good games get shut down that are like, from a particular, I mean, from almost any subjective standpoint, like these are good games. Like X Defiant, we were just talking about, like
I loved it.
good game. Like by most of the ways that you would define it, and kind of getting shut down, it's I think maybe even leads to more of your point, like underlines that of just like, why play the same thing for a decade or two when we're going to constantly have, and it seems like this acceleration of amazing new games and stuff coming out, in the barrier to being able to build games getting lower and lower and lower and lower and lower and stuff like that that can contribute to that. Now that you mentioned MMOs, I'm not going to be able to get out of my head, but what other games did you just like what MMOs, what other games did you grow up playing, or that you just even now still just really enjoy?
PlanetSide 1, I don't know if you guys know how that worked, but that was like my first like true love of a video game. I got I bought the boxes for it on eBay like a year ago. I got them on my desk at work. Like there's actually like speaking of games to shut down, there's an emulator for the game. Maybe one person out there will hear this podcast and be drawn to it. It's called PlanetSide Forever. It's a beautiful 2002 or something game, and like every Sunday, like 20 guys in their 30s hop on and play, because it's just, you can't get people to play the game other than organizing it. And yeah, Counter-Strike, I grew up playing Source and then CSGO, and I love those games. And nowadays, I don't play games because I just can't find the same. Like, I work at a computer sometimes 12, 13 hours a day. I don't want to sit at a computer more past that. But I did start this past off season, my break over Christmas, playing some Warhammer. I've never done Warhammer, but I grew up seeing it in the shops. So I played Magic and being like, I want to do that. And now I finally have the expendable income to do it. And that's fun. It's like a way to, occupy myself without it involving a screen, like just painting and building them. I realized the hobby takes a tremendous amount of time that I don't have. So I think it'll probably take me like a year or two to build an army, but yeah. How about you guys? Any big games that are?
I had the same experience. Star Wars Galaxies. I don't know if I remember. It was the same time around PlanetSide. It was the early 2000s. In that game, I lost jobs and relationships and stuff to play. I mean, I literally would just play all day, every day. It's all I wanted to do. And same thing, like there's emulators and like emulator servers that I'll still go and play and be like, I wish this still existed. Like, please, same thing. Anyone out there that watches this and wants to play Star Wars Galaxies on an emulator, like, let's go.
They're doing better. They're more populated than the PlanetSide ones, so
yeah,
probably an easier jumping in.
Yeah, there's a couple that still have like 1,000 concurrent users sometimes and stuff like that. That's like pretty good. But yeah, that's what's crazy. I mean, these are games that are 20 plus years old that people still clearly like, I want to play these, and don't exist.
I've got memories attached to them because they were fundamentally social. I mean, games back then, you had to work with people in the game's design kind of, and even old Counter-Strike, right? Like you could download ESEA, but like everyone's introduction to Counter-Strike usually ended up with like, you're using a server browser, so you end up joining the same server because it's the one that was fun, and you make friends with other people doing the same thing. And I mean, that's just, I don't know how anyone makes friends in modern game design. Like, how are you? It's so hard. Like, you're not gonna end up. The game's not designed to encourage you to play with the same person over and over. I definitely miss that.
Well, I think people are friendlier before, like
100%. I was gonna say the same thing. I also think like that's kind of part of the design. It felt more community oriented and collaborative, or at least there was a higher ratio of that than just competitiveness and toxicity and like that kind of level in general. Just seems like over time that shifted.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like just going back to your point about Premiere, they totally need that to take off because just like you're saying, you're only playing ranked so many times before you don't want to hear it anymore. You don't want to listen to people argue. And that was kind of the system that I grew up in, right? Because I played Counter-Strike 1.6. I played in Cal. We used IRC to find scrims. Like as a 13, 14-year-old, I don't even know. Like thinking back, how did I even figure that out? Like that I would, like I would go on IRC, join a channel, find friends somehow, and then we would come together on Ventrilo and we would find scrims, and then we would join this league. That was calleague.com, and we would start in open and try to work our way. Like,
I wonder if that's part of it. Like, I wonder if like having to solve those problems and like collectively like add to the community aspect of it and the like, I don't want to say coolness of it, but like the uniqueness of it. That just like, oh yeah, here's this place that not everybody can easily find or like do, and we've gone through that together, so we have like these similarities and stuff to bond on socially. I don't know, because same thing. Right. And I remember like asking the guild, hey, can we have enough money to pay for an event server? Like, on Trilla, like, who's going to pay this month? Who's going to pay that? Like, for sure.
Yeah.
I remember being stuck in that mode. Like, I didn't play games for a while. I came back. I built a computer. And I was like, all right, send me the Ventrilo right now. And they're like, Ventrilo, like, download Discord, you idiot. Like, what are you doing?
I miss just having, and I bet people have this on Discord because it is well designed for it. I just am at a point in my life where I don't. But growing up, right, you had a Ventrilo server, and like it wouldn't be like I message a player, my friend, and I'm like, you want to play games? Okay, let's get on Ventrilo. It would just be like, I woke up, I had my breakfast, I joined Ventrilo. Oh, what, you're in here? What are we playing? Or I just sit in there playing a game by myself. I hear the join sound, my buddy's talking. It was so fun.
Yeah.
I mean, and I do think, I'm sure people have that with Discord too. I just don't because I'm old and work a lot. But yeah, I remember IRC and Counter-Strike, they had a ringer channel where if you needed a fifth player to finish your scrim, you'd post, to do a scrim, you'd post, we need a rank LF1 ringer. You need to be whatever, play this role, be this age, be located on the East Coast. And my team and I, when we were bored after scrims, we would prank people. We would go in the ringer channel and be like, yeah, I can play. And then they give you the server, the team speaker, Ventrilo info. And then I'd give it to my team and we'd all join. We'd be like, yeah, it's the ringer. Oh, you got 5 of us? And I remember one time we did that. And then they were like, let's just 10-man, which for any viewers who are younger and don't know that, that's just you get 10 people together in any TAC 5v5 shooter and you just pick captains and build teams and play. And I remember, we all joined. They're like, well, in this case, let's just 10-man. They got one more ringer. I made some good friends in that night. It was a lot of fun. You're gonna remember stuff like that, right? You're not gonna remember just some gameplay from a game 10 years ago, 5 years ago, but you'll remember social memories.
For sure. And so many people like growing up, again, that's why they kind of would shit on gaming, is that they saw it as like an antisocial thing when it was really the opposite. It was like an incredibly social, and for me, and I'm sure for many others, more social than like reality, quote unquote reality, like kind of being out. It was a more frictionless social experience where you can like adventure and do things and share and create memories together. I just remember, because you mentioned it too about, people meeting their husbands or wives and stuff like that. And as we talked about like the hype cycle in gaming, it was maybe a few years ago, and like a venture capital LinkedIn thought leader posting something like, did you know that video games are actually social? And there's all these things. It's kind of stuff. I'm like, people were getting married in MMOs 25 years ago. Like, what do you, of course, what do you mean? Like, did you know they're social? Like, what?
Yeah.
Well, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I find it easier sometimes to connect to like old gamer friends I grew up with and I've talked to in 5 years and I've never met in person than like sometimes like, friends I knew in college, like that I spent years with.
Well, you just know that you like the same things, right? There's no like in between and this small talk about things that you don't really want to talk about anyways. You can just go directly to what you guys know, what you guys like, and just feel like that, right?
I think in reality too, I'll go on a little the neuroscientist Wayne will go on a little scientific tangent and stuff like that. Of just like, I don't think the brain cares about like memories and shared experiences in a virtual environment, in a real environment, it doesn't care.
Yeah.
Like these are emotions and memories and experiences and adventures or whatever that build up and form your identity and your memory and those emotional attachments over time, period.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that it's like, oh, you know, it was at school in person or it was at home playing PlanetSide. Like biologically, we don't care. Our brain doesn't know the difference. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I think it's, you know, totally makes sense that you would have closer bonds and long bonds with those folks that you've played with and grew up with, even, 10, 15, 20 years later. Like, I have so many friends I've never met in real life.
Yeah.
Never met them. I still talk to them.
Yeah.
Because we played Galaxies together 25 years ago or whatever. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know those memories are the same things that if the game was still alive, are gonna keep you playing it, right? Like you're gonna outgrow just because of the nature of modern life and the path it is. You're not gonna be able to put the same time into a game that you could in your late teens or mid 20s. But like when you're in your 30s, 40s, like those memories will keep you. You'll still have the social connections like that. That's what would keep you coming back, right?
yes.
It's gonna be that part.
Now I'm, as usual, probably the oldest person on the call, and I have 3 kids, and it's like it's come full circle for me of like not having as much time to play games, but now my kids are of the age all they want to do is play games, so I'm kind of a cool dad, and we just play together. Like it's like I got a whole nother cohort of friends that I get to share what was important in identity shaping for me as a child with my own children, and now we're all just like little gaming best friends as if we're all the same age, just sitting together,
awesome.
you know, kind of playing whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like I rediscovered time to just have that same, and I think you mentioned is this the totally exact word for me, which was like an escape. It was like this amazing other reality escape therapy, whatever. With my kids. So it kind of came full circle. It was like I grew up, I didn't have as much time, and now that I have kids that have time, it's like, I'll tell my wife, like, sorry, this is what they want to do. Yeah, like if we were out playing football or something, it's the same thing. We just want to play games.
Yeah.
And you can make sure they play the good ones, whether those are
Exactly, yeah.
or newer ones. There's still games that capture that. Like I don't really play it, but I played it like 3 or 4 years ago. Sea of Thieves, like that was just like the design of that was like, oh, they get it. They get like what games used to be. Like your proximity yelling on a mic to somebody, and you're like messing with them and just sailing around. You're joking, and then you're attacking them, and like it's just there's definitely still gems out there. And like I daydream about like the point of being a dad where I can be like, yeah, I'm sorry the graphics suck, but you got to play the first day of second. Like it's time. Come on.
Yeah, for sure. It is. That's also been funny, like, through their eyes where they're like, they'll play like a bunch of Roblox, obviously, because they have it on their tablet kind of wherever. And they're like, Dad, will you play this with me? I'm like, sure, let's play it. And they're like, okay, this game is pretty cool. And I'm like, playing something like this isn't a game. Like it's just like you get in an elevator and it goes up randomly, and then you get out of the elevator and it's like a different scene from like 2000 level 1997 level graphics quality, right? And they're like, I'm like, okay, what do you do? They're like, what do you mean, what do you do?
That's it.
You go in the elevator.
Yeah.
You go to another one. And I'm like, stop playing this. Let me show you something. Let me show you something else.
Yeah.
This isn't a game. This is like really bad graphics demo. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, before we wrap up, because I know you got to go, any shout outs, anything at all?
No, thank you for having me, guys. This was a ton of fun. I really appreciate it, and I have a ton of fun. I'd love to do it again sometime.
Yeah, we'll for sure have you back.
I'll play some Planets. You need someone to play PlanetSide with. I never really got into it, and I always have the yearning and aching for early 2000s MMO experience. So
yeah,
I'm down. I'll learn.
It's a ton of fun. I will say there's one frustrating thing about it that I didn't remember as a kid, which is that the normally the server side decides whether bullets hit. This game's like client side, so like it's you're peeking a guy and you unpeak, but on his screen in Europe you're still on his screen. So you've unpeaked, and then a third of a second later you're just like taking the edge. I these kickball on over here in France. You were there, so you're dead.
And then as a CS player, you're screaming interp.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, check it out. It's my I got my Spotify Wrapped. It was my most listened to thing of last year. It was the original soundtrack.
I did that with Final Fantasy, like Final Fantasy
Oh,
7
yeah.
and stuff like that. Like when I would sit and code, that's what I would do. I'd put on like Final Fantasy 7 soundtrack. See ya.
Yeah.
Just in the zone. In the zone. But yeah, this was great.
Yeah. Thank you, Adam.
A ton of fun.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Good to see you again, Jimmy, and good to meet you, Wayne. And
Yeah, for sure.
take it easy,
Same.
guys.